Hey, girlfriends, welcome to another episode of Girlfriends and Goals. We're your hosts, Miosha.
In Samaria.
This podcast is a space where we'll talk about friendships, life goals, a little bit of pop culture, and all things womanhood.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about the topic of vetting friends, how to go about doing it, why it's important, our thoughts on the types of friends you should avoid making, and a lot more. So, we definitely have a good episode in store for you today. But if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please make sure that you give us a 5-star rating. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. All right, so we're going to kick today's episode off with the girlfriend check-in segment. And this is where we usually ask a question to check in with each other, but this question is a little bit different today. So I'm going to ask Miosha to answer this question for me and then vice versa. So, do I seem like more of a creative or analytical type? And you have to explain your answer.
Hmm. Believe it or not, this question is very hard for me, even though I've known Samaria for over 10 years, because I feel like it really depends on the area of her life, where she would be analytical or creative. So I know y'all, I can't pick one answer and I'm gonna pick both
No.
because
What's interesting is you saying, "Oh, this is such a hard question." I'm like, you do this for every question, so I don't know why you're acting like this is new.
it is because, well, it's hard because I feel like you're both. I feel like, especially when it comes to the podcast, hopefully you all are following us on Instagram. A lot of pretty much all of our feed, our reels, the whole aesthetic is, I feel like Samaria's vision come to life. She's very creative in that space. So hopefully you all are following us there. But I also feel like you're pretty analytical, especially when it comes to the decisions that you make. I feel like you're very thoughtful, you're not very hasty, you're going to weigh all the pros and cons. Also feel like in the academia space, like
Mm.
at this point, I feel like you're doing a lot of writing, but especially the time I spent with you in undergrad, and I wasn't there during your grad school program, your first one, but I feel like you were pretty analytical during that time and in that space. So I'm going to go with a little bit of both. Now, if I were to say how I feel like you want to spend your time,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it would be in the creative space.
Ooh,
Yeah.
interesting. So
And
I'm
now creative, not just in like a social media aspect, but even creating creative in terms of speaking and writing. I don't envision you just like sitting at a desk job. I just see you creating something.
you know what's really interesting? I never really thought of myself as a creative person until maybe the end of my master's program. But I never thought I had a creative bone in my body. I would actually stay away from things that, required creativity. I just really thought of myself as not a creative person. Yeah. And I,
That's shocking.
I think it's because I conflated creative with like artistic in the sense of like I don't paint well. I don't even really color well. Like sometimes I just don't like the colors I put together when I'm coloring. So there's that. Like when everybody had the adult coloring book phase,
Mm.
I stayed away from that because even though it could be calming, I knew I would really stress out about it because I would want the colors to look good and I just felt like I couldn't make them look good. So, yeah.
That is so interesting to me because I feel like, especially when you were like, oh, I'm going to go to grad school, the
Mhm.
first thing I thought of was, oh, she'll have the opportunity to create because it's not so like, oh, 1 + 1 = 2. And, at least
Yeah.
the type of program you were in, it really would require you thinking outside of the box and,
Yeah.
being able to take on these larger than life ideas. So
Yeah.
I immediately thought, oh, that's creativity all the way when she's
Yeah.
taking this on.
Now I see it that way. So when I decided to do the PhD like application and stuff, I had a whole moment where I was like, you are creative. See, you're like, You're creative, just not with paint and coloring and stuff like that, but you're creative with your words and with your
Mhm.
ideas. Like, so I had a whole moment where I'm like, you've been down on yourself for no reason. You are
Mm.
creative. So
Oh, yeah.
I see it now, but yeah, not before, child.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so I guess I'll ask you the same thing. Would
Yeah.
you deem me as more analytical or creative?
Okay. So I think everybody has a little bit of both, and I think you have some of both. I would probably say analytical more than creative,
Mm.
uh, which is interesting because I think you're more creative in the sense that I lack, as in you're better with colors and, and way better with colors than I am, and design and things like that. I think
Mhm.
you're really great. So I think that, but then with your whole decision making process and you thinking things through, you're very, very, very analytical on
Yeah.
a day to day basis. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that, and, I'll say that, in my time when I was in college, I used to do hair. I used to work at a natural hair salon.
Mhm.
I may have mentioned it, and one of the things that I noticed when I, like, transitioned into the corporate space was I didn't realize how creative I was actually able to be in that
Mhm.
space and time, and I missed it, where it's like, "Oh, I could go to work and just, like, think of these different styles, and hopefully the people would allow me to do them on them."
I used
But
to.
yeah, so I was really able to kind of nourish that
Yeah.
creative side. It was definitely something that I missed once I
Yeah.
moved on from it. So,
You know, this is actually making me think for the people who listen to this, but also if I could give advice to younger me or my nieces or little cousins, whatever, I think I would encourage them to find out what area of their life they can be creative in, because I wouldn't want them to do like I did and just shut down an entire part of them because they don't think they align with that at all. I would encourage them to see how they are both things. You can be analytical and you can be creative, and just kind of pour into both sides of yourself. Like, see in what ways or see what activities bring out each of those sides. So that way you're not just closing yourself off to so many opportunities to express yourself as a human being.
oh,
So,
yeah. And even I feel like this podcast is
hmm,
really pushing us into being creative and coming up with content and ideas. And
yeah.
it's fun most of the time, but as you mentioned earlier on, feeling like, oh, am I creative? I do feel that pressure, even with the podcast of like, are we going to be able to continue to come up with ideas? Like, what if we go
Yeah.
dry?
Right, right. No, I definitely have that fear too, because some topics are overdone, and so I never want to just do what's always been done. I want to provide a different angle or something, like produce something different.
Hmm.
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right. So we're going to get into today's topic, which I'm really excited for, which is vetting friends. So, Samaria, I want to start by asking you, would you describe yourself as being particular in how you classify other women within your life that aren't your family? So, not an aunt, not a
Mhm.
cousin, but the bucket of best friend, friend, associate, or we cool.
Yeah, I don't really do the associate or we cool much.
Mm,
But I do think there are levels to friend. So you could be a work friend, you could be a friend who, I met you at some point and I liked you, but we're not talking every day. We catch up with each other every now and then. So yeah, I think there are different levels to friends. I If I was pushed, I might break it down to like, oh, this is an acquaintance. But if I'm having a conversation with somebody, I might just say, oh yeah, I have a friend who works at this company. Or I have a friend who, went on a ski trip and she said it went like this. So
mm.
in day-to-day conversations, no. But if I'm pushed, or if someone is talking to me about, I don't know, something that has to deal with my intimate circle, then I would definitely distinguish and say, oh, my best friend, or my acquaintance, or this person I work with.
Mm.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, why
Um,
don't you do like the associate or we're cool?
I feel like
And I don't know the answer to this, so I'm learning.
I'm trying to see if I know the answer. I think it's just easier to say a friend.
Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like associate is kind of, I don't know that people say that. They may say acquaintance if they're describing it to someone and maybe they're not there. The other person isn't
Yeah.
there. Yeah, I could
I
see
will.
that.
For myself though, I know where people stand. So if I were to have a conversation with myself, which I do, everybody does that, right? But if I were to have a conversation with myself, I am intentional about which box everybody goes into because I have to be, because when you're a certain like when you're how do I want to say this? When you are extremely close to me, my feelings are all invested. And so
Mm,
something could happen to you and you might not even cry, I will cry for you. Like I get very invested. So as of maybe the last 3 4 years, I've had to just sit down with myself and understand where I stand with certain people so
mm.
that I'm not so emotionally invested because it can be real bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that side. I think for me, I think I'm more particular than I actually am. And what makes me say that is, as you mentioned, like say you're in a situation in public, I feel that sometimes it can get kind of awkward to where you don't be like, oh, you wouldn't want to say like, oh, well, we're not friends like that. So I would just be like, oh, that's my friend. Or like you have friends that really aren't my friends, but I would be like, oh, my friend's friend or my friend so and so.
Yeah.
So that sometimes makes you feel like, are you as particular? But I think the difference is in my mind, I of course know, for my own peace of mind, kind of where people stand in my life. But I have been in situations where maybe I've classified a person as a friend and we really weren't friends or close like that, but it just felt awkward to be like, "Oh, this is my acquaintance so and so."
Yeah. It's really awkward. So I had an instance where a friend and I were both working with a professor, right? And he had a conversation with her and she was saying, yeah, because, Samaria and I are friends. And this professor and I are pretty cool. So we know each other well enough that he could do what I'm about to describe. But she goes, yeah, because Samaria and I are friends. And so he asked her, are you guys really friends? And she was like, she was telling me about it. She's like, I had to stop for a second, like, wait, I feel like we're friends because we've had all these conversations and we look out for each other. So maybe you had said something to him. And I'm like, girl, no, he's just messing with you. Because he did the same thing with me. He's like, are you sure y'all are friends? But yeah. So
I
that could be
mean,
awkward if we
that
both said no.
that is a good point too because you do kind of want to be on the same page, I guess, of where you
Yes.
both stand in each other's lives. I mean, we don't want to be out here claiming people as friends who would be like, actually, no,
I don't even
we're
like
not.
her.
So that leads me to, I guess for you, do you feel like there's a certain amount of time or things that need to happen? Because this young lady mentioned, like, oh, we've been hanging out. Like,
Yes.
I thought that we were. So I guess for what for you needs to be there for you to say, okay, well, yeah, this person is legit my friend.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a particular criteria I have for this. I think it's a play it by ear thing. It's definitely not time for me because I've noticed that the last two people who I've let into my friendship circle, I didn't know them long. And I don't know if I'm just better now because I'm an adult and have a better sense of who I am as a person. I don't know if it's that I'm better at vetting friends. So it doesn't take long for me to be like, oh no, this is a real one. We can be cool, but I'll keep a distance. But yeah, it's definitely not time for me. I think it's just interaction. So how many things can we relate with each other on? And do I do I like the character of that person? Do I like that the character that that person has presented in our time of being friends? Like, are they showing loyalty? Do they actually care for me? Is there reciprocity? Like, are we both reaching out to each other? Yeah, is there reciprocity? And yeah, is this someone who I look up to in some way? It's important for me to
Hmm.
have a circle that I look up to, because then I'm always challenged to be better in whatever way I think, whatever way I admire them, I'm always challenged to be better in that particular way. So
Yeah.
that's me. And what about you?
Yeah, I'd agree with everything you said, and I don't want to repeat all of it, but I'd also add to just my intuition and how
Hmm.
much am I actually drawn to this person? Does it feel forced?
Hmm.
Like, oh, I feel like I'm checking a box to check in on this person, or do we just vibe? Does it feel right? And I don't necessarily mean from a place of like, only feeling good and happy times because
Hmm.
friendships are multifaceted. You have your ups, your downs, but even through all of that, am I drawn to this person?
Yes,
And then you mentioned length of time, but I would also say too, how often I interact with a person doesn't, at
that's true.
least for me, denote like, oh, we're friends or not. Because I have friends where, okay, we haven't talked in like 2, 3 months, but we just pick up right where we left off for life reasons. We're just in different places, different seasons. We're not able to connect as often. And I don't think it would be fair to compare it to like, oh yeah, like Samira and I talk multiple times a
Yes.
day. Like that's just where we are in this season. But there were times where you and I couldn't talk as often, but you were no less of a friend. It
Hmm.
just was where we were. And then there were times during COVID when we talked way too much.
Okay, before COVID, Miosha had me on a once a week schedule, y'all. And
Listen,
so this was when we were working. Like I
life was
remember
life in.
I would be leaving work to go to choir rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our time. Like on my drive to choir rehearsal, she would be leaving work and we would get it in on
Yep.
Wednesdays, or was it Thursday? One of those days.
Yeah, it was Wednesdays. I would be leaving work, going to Zumba, and you would
Hmm.
be like leaving school or going to wherever you were going. I don't remember, but life was just lifing and our schedules were busy. And of course, if we had the time, we would talk outside of that, but
Yeah.
it just worked to have like, okay, this is our time where
Yeah.
we connect. And like I said, it didn't make us any more or less of friends,
Hmm.
but that draw and that yearning was still there for
Yes.
me to be pulled to her,
Hmm.
and wanting to keep up with that friendship.
Yeah. So I do want to just ask you, because this was a topic that you came up with. And I want you to kind of share what motivated or what inspired this episode and why it was important for you that we had this conversation.
Yeah. So for me, what inspired this episode was just seeing the recent situations that have happened with young Black women, either on social media or in the media, where they found themselves in peculiar situations where they've either lost their lives or suffered severe harm
Mhm.
involving people that they called their friends. So most notably, Meg the Stallion. We've heard enough about that. We'll leave that in 2022.
Mhm.
But also Shanquilla Robinson, the young lady who went on vacation with a group of friends and unfortunately didn't make it home. And so with these events happening, I noticed in the comments, the reaction or response videos, a lot of people talking about friendship and expectations. And one of the things I saw more than a few times, way too many, I think, but Samaria, I'll get your opinion, was um, people just saying, like, see, this is why you have to be careful with who you call a friend.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to get one, your thoughts on that statement or comment or response. It was kind of like people's response to the situations.
Yes.
Um, so one, your thoughts, and or two, how you would respond to
Mm,
hearing that.
yeah. I think the first response that I had was, "What horrible friends," quote unquote. Right. So my knee jerk reaction is to think about the people who did wrong and not the person who was wronged. But I do understand people using these situations as cautionary tales because they want to prevent others from getting in situations where maybe you felt a little bit funny, but you dismissed it, or you were just so blind that you didn't see this person had it out for you. So I
Mhm.
can understand both responses. I think when it came to some people saying, well, you got to be careful who you're around, some of the comments I think went a little bit far where it seemed like you asked for it rhetoric, and that I was not here for. So I understand us using it as a lesson. I get that, but we there's a thin line. And a lot of people were on the, in my opinion, wrong side of that line.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. In addition to, I feel like, it's not giving much grace.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think these situations that we've heard about, I think I would describe them as a bit extreme in that I would say, based off the numbers, most people probably won't experience anything in a friendship to that magnitude. Like, I think about my friends, and even if even if you have it out with someone, you have a disagreement, no one ever thinks that it's going to be taken that far.
Right.
And so I just think of, okay, where's the grace? And even with family, it's like, okay, well, at that point, who do you trust?
Hmm.
And I also feel like it's putting, I think, a lot of accountability on the person who's on the receiving end of
Yeah.
the bad behavior of the friends, and not really talking about what these so-called friends actually did. It seems very deflective, but you're right. I understand that these can be used as cautionary tales, but I just kept thinking, where's the grace?
Also, I feel like everybody's had moments where they've been naive and it didn't cost them their life, or it didn't get them in a situation where, they were shot, So I I agree with you on the grace portion because everybody has been naive, and these situations that you mentioned were of like young women. And so I think in that stage of life, you can see a lot of naivete. I think that's how you say that word. But you do see a lot of it. And it's just that most times people are able to get through it and then learn the lesson for themselves, as opposed to being left in Mexico by the group that, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Being in your young 20s, early teens, that is the time for learning and discovery. And so, us, being in our 30s now, looking back, we've had more life experience, but thankfully during that time, the lessons that we would have learned didn't cost us, and we're still here
Yes.
to talk about it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think
Um,
that's why we have to be careful about shame. I mean, the internet is going to shame you regardless because you don't have, like, there's no nuance on the internet. And so that's the real downside of it, is that there isn't this space, or there might be spaces like this, so let me not say that, but generally there isn't this space where we can look at all of the details and consider people's ages, where they are in their life, what the friendship might have looked like, why they felt like it was okay to ignore red flags if that's something that they did. You know, there's no room for that. But I think in relationships in real life, like
mhm.
if a mother were to use these examples as a cautionary tale to her children, like she kind of knows who's around her kid or her children. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think the internet is a crazy place, but in real life, I do think we should use these examples and talk about all the nuances so that younger people understand what to look for in friends, what not to look for in friends, all that
Y
good stuff.
yeah. Yeah, and to your point about, again, about the length of time, and sometimes you just having to go off of intuition, there may not be this, like, glaring red flag. So, I'm not sure if you've heard of, this young lady. I forget her name, I'll put it in the description box, but
Mhm.
she's a solo traveler now. She has a pretty big platform on Instagram, but she told a story about how, before her solo travel days, how she went with girlfriends. One of them she had been friends with for over a decade,
Hmm.
and they were cool. Everything was good. She felt comfortable to travel that far with her. And
Yeah.
there was another mutual friend who they had been friends for a few years. No glaring red flags. Long story short, she made a comment about this friend, the friend she had been friends with for a decade, about her boyfriend. I guess they were having problems, and she was just giving her friendly advice of like, girl, I don't think you should, be with him or whatever she said.
Yeah.
Long story short, it turned from that conversation and the friend kind of acting standoffish for the rest of the night to her waking up and both girls abandoned her in Paris and left and checked out of the room. She woke up with what do you call it, housekeeping knocking on the door thinking that they all checked out. And so even within that situation, they had been friends for a while. And
Mhm.
even when people have disagreements, you just don't think that people will take it that far left. And I think all of us kind of carried, like you said, a bit of naiveness with
Mhm.
us. Like, okay, we could have a disagreement. Okay, we sleep on it. We're good. Not we sleep on it. I wake up and y'all are gone out of the country.
And thank God it was Paris and not, somewhere that was a lot more remote.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But at certain stages of life, the intuition just don't be intuitioning. And that's what I have grace for, because you feel like you have something that's tugging you and you don't know how to trust it yet. Because I
Mm,
can think of situations in my, not with friends, but just situations where my intuition, I can look back now and see that every single thing in my being was saying, this situation isn't right. But I didn't know to trust that. And I
mhm.
remember going to people and being like, well, hey, what do you think about this? But they weren't in the situation. So they would give, what they thought. And even when they gave advice, it didn't feel right. I'm like, I think there's something they're missing. But
Yeah.
I was so new. I was so like, what do they say? Still wet behind the ear? Is that what that statement is? When you're a baby and you're still like wet behind the ear?
I haven't heard
Neosha,
that
you are
one.
from the South. You sure you haven't heard that? Because it's a Southern thing. They say you still got milk on your tongue or
I've
you're
heard
still wet
that.
behind the ear.
I heard the milk on the tongue, not the wet behind the ear.
Okay, I'm gonna Google it because I know I didn't make that up. I'm creative, but I ain't that creative. Okay. But yes, I just didn't know to trust my intuition at that point. I wish I could teach young girls a trust your intuition class, but how do you even do something like that?
It's the life experience and just living and gaining the confidence.
Yeah.
So you talked about intuition and maybe not trusting it, but I think at this point in your life, do you feel like it's possible for you to vet potential friends? And if so, how?
Hmm. I do think it's possible actually, but
Mm,
I will say that's a huge but. Uh, as we progress in life, priorities change, people change. And so I think this might have been on our cutting people off episode, but I think sometimes when things don't go well in a friendship or any type of relationship, people are quick to say, oh, well, they were never my friend. And I don't necessarily think that's true. I think
mm,
they were the friend they could be or the friend that you needed at that stage. And now they're not anymore. So
mm.
I do think it's possible to vet friends, but always be vetting, if that makes sense.
That is a whole word because I feel like I've been there where I've maybe started to question certain friendships
Hmm.
because of where we stand right now. And I'm like, well, were they always like that? And I was just blind to it. I'm like, no, but maybe they were a legit friend at that time. But you're right. People change. I've changed.
Yeah.
Situations happen, but that doesn't necessarily negate the
Mhm.
entire friendship. And I don't know, it's also hard too because you can't vet for the future. Like I know you, we have a history, but I don't know who you're gonna be 10 years from now.
Yeah. Yes, and you just have to hope that we grow together. It's the same thing I think with like romantic relationships, and people are like, "Oh, we grew apart." And yeah, you're actively growing into different versions of yourself, and so is the other person. And it really comes down to always like reevaluating.
Always be checking in. I remember that was something that Brittany or Miss Champagne that
Oh,
we've had on the podcast a few times. She mentioned in one of our episodes that always sticks out to me. Like we should always be checking in on our
mhm.
relationships. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. But I don't know. Did you ask me how to vet as well, or how do I go about vetting?
yeah. How do you go about vetting?
I go off the vibes.
Yeah, I know.
I do. I think I say vibes, but intuition. So I had a situation where there was someone who I hit it off with immediately, but I
Mm,
realized that I was hesitant to bring them into my close circle, and I sat with that. I I
mm,
sat with it for some time. Like, why am I hesitant if we really got along, so well? Why am I hesitant to continue this? And I think it had a lot to do with where I was, but also at this stage in my life, having a core group. And when I say core group, not like a core group where we all hang out with each other, but my own core group where they might not even hang with each other, but they know of each
yeah.
other because of me. And I think because I had a core group that I had grown to trust and I held in a very intimate space, I I realized I'm just not taking applications on that level at this time. And
Mm,
I didn't know how to be okay with that because I'm such a friend person,
mm,
like I didn't know how to do that. So I'm like, is it that this person isn't trustworthy? Why am I not giving myself in ways that I have in the past? And yeah, it was just a really rough time for me. And there was a certain space and certain people were in that space, and I wasn't open to letting others in, I think.
I have a follow up, and you let me know if I'm prying too much,
You
but
are. No, I'm just kidding.
how do you navigate that? Because I feel like you're a very radiant person. People want to spend
Mhm.
time with you. They want to be in the circle.
Not her hyping me.
So how do you navigate just like being in that space of like, hey, like I have what I need. It's not anything against you.
Yeah.
I just kind of have what I need for this season right now
Mhm.
because I feel like some women can really relate to that, but it would require you, I assume, putting up maybe certain boundaries and having certain conversations with people who want to go there.
I don't know the answer to this question because I don't think I handled it well by
Mm,
my standards. I still have a relationship with this person, but uh, I don't know how I could have handled it better. But I know that even during that time, I wasn't satisfied with it. And I did think about having a conversation, but I felt like a conversation would have been too harsh. Like, I have a friend who
mm,
told me this story. He was going to the movies with a female friend, and she was running late. So he went ahead and bought her ticket and some snacks and just sent her a text like, "Hey, when you come, just come in the theater. I have your ticket, I have your snacks," or something like that. And she responded, "Oh, this ain't a date. This ain't what it is." And he's like, "Girl, nobody's trying to date you. Get in here because the movie's about to start." So I didn't have the conversation because maybe I was thinking too much into it, and that's not even what
mm,
that person was looking for. So I think because I was in the stage of life that I was in, I was overthinking it. Because I
yeah.
wasn't giving the response that I would have usually given, I was overthinking it. And this person probably didn't even like care like that. So I didn't have the conversation, but we're still cool till this day.
Mm,
And I think it was also, I felt like they needed a certain type of friend. And there was a battle of, I want to meet their needs because this person deserves someone who is there for them during this time,
mhm.
but also I'm not capable of it in this moment. So there was a conflict there for me.
Wow, a lot of self-awareness there.
I try. I have a whole day dedicated, like per week, dedicated to reflection and self awareness. So I try to be, but of course, nobody can be 100% self
Yeah.
aware. Yeah. How about you? Tell me about your vetting process, or if you even think it's a possibility.
So I feel like in my earlier 20s,
Mhm.
I'll be 100% honest in that I don't really know that I had a vetting process.
Okay.
Like, if I meet you, we click, we cool.
I slipped right in there, huh?
Yeah, like if we fall off, we fall off. It happens. So, my early 20s, I don't think I put much thought to it. Obviously, you want to make sure the vibe is right. But beyond that, it's like, oh, we click, we're cool. Even Samara and I think a lot of our early friendship was us just enjoying our time together and not really vetting for the women we were at that time and that we were going to evolve into being. So,
It was
um,
convenient.
right. It was convenient, but I do think though with certain life situations happening,
Yeah.
it kind of did force us to independently examine like, okay, well, how much do I want this person in my life? Now I have to put more effort into making this person a part of my life, especially once I moved further away. It's one thing when you're right in each other's face, but it's like, okay, when you're not here, I'm not there, it takes a lot of effort. And a part of that is both of us making a decision like, oh, we want to put that effort. So there's value there. I'd say in the space that I am now, I do feel like I am much more critical,
Mhm.
and also not as hasty. I feel like in my earlier 20s, it's like, oh, let's hang out. Oh, you're cool. I'm cool. Let's go get drinks, whatever. Versus now, it's just going to take more time because life is lifing. And also, I feel like, and not that I didn't feel like what I had in life was valuable back then, but I feel like what I have right now in terms of my family, my friend groups, it's just so valuable to me that I can't risk somebody coming through messing it up just to be 100%.
Yeah.
So I'm much more thoughtful, a lot less hasty, and just giving things time. And part of that could be letting people in a bit and just kind of seeing where things go, but also like not rushing.
Yeah. I will say, not that this was intentional, but I think one of the things that was a vetting process for me is just who's willing to put up with me not wanting to hang out outside the house. That'll get rid of a lot of people.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
yeah. But no, I do understand what you're saying. Like, you've worked hard to build the life that you have right now. And so you really have to be careful who you bring in. It's like if you have a lot of valuables, um, you have to be careful of how much access people have to those valuables. It can't be
Yes.
everybody, and you can't just leave it out on the street corner. You have to, take care of it, guard it in a sense.
Yeah. And I don't want to make it seem like, oh, if you want to be my friend, you have to prove yourself because it's mutual as well. But
Yeah.
I do think, though, that you kind of have to put in time and like show that almost show your value. And I feel like for people who are vetting me as a friend, I have to do the same thing. I can't expect that I can just meet someone and they're going to bring me around their house and their family and I'm
Yeah.
at the family reunion. Like, no, it takes time to build to that point,
Hmm.
at least with me. So
At least with me. Do you feel like it takes as much? Okay, I'll phrase it this way. Do you think it takes more vetting for romantic relationships or these platonic relationships?
mm. So I think hmm, in the beginning of a relationship,
Mhm.
a romantic relationship, I'm just going to speak in general terms from what I've observed. I
Okay.
think there isn't as much vetting because I think with our girlfriends, I think we're much more willing to bare our souls, not assuming you're not a super duper private person.
Mhm.
Say you're in the mid range, right?
Okay.
Where I don't know. I feel like people are much more willing to be themselves. Um, and so with friendships, I think people can be more harsh initially because they're
Hmm.
trying to get to the point where they can be vulnerable. Versus with a romantic relationship, I feel like, yeah, you could be dating somebody sometimes for a minute, and they still maybe really don't know certain sides of you because that pressure is there because of the romantic side. So I think it just depends on where you are in the relationship. I think the longer you're in a romantic relationship, people will vet harder, maybe because marriage is coming into the question or engagement. Um, I think you should be vetting earlier than that, but
We have a whole episode on that, I think.
yeah, versus, friendships is like, oh, well, if this is my good girlfriend and I'm telling her all these things, I need to be maybe more critical up front. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think it depends on what stage of life you're in. Like, I feel like my teen years, early 20s, your parents are like, be careful of the company you keep. There's so much focus on your friends, your friends, your friends. And then, it's like, okay, you get older, and now we're talking about romantic relationships and vetting. And for some people, their parents may or may not even have those conversations when it comes to romantic partnerships and
Hmm.
vetting. But I feel like almost every parent is warning their kids about the company that they keep.
Interesting. Okay. I actually think I do more vetting on the romantic side than the friend side initially.
Mm,
Um, yeah, a whole
okay.
lot more because I'm always like squinting my eyes, like, what is this person? What is your agenda here? Like, what?
So I will say though, do you think that's the case because I feel like you're a serious dater for marriage? Like, I feel like the people who are just dating just to date and like, oh, if we click, it's cool. We get
Okay.
engaged. But if you're in that phase of, oh, we're dating for marriage, of course you're going to
Mhm.
be going in with the
Okay.
magnifying glass.
Okay, so yeah, then that's definitely me. I'm that person. But also I think with friends, not to sound non-committal, but I really can leave you by the wayside. We don't have to be friends. We could cut each other off. Not that I'm so quick to do that, but if
Hmm.
I meet someone, we have a good interaction, that doesn't mean we have to like start texting every day or anything like that. So I think it's not easier to let go of friends because of course I have my core group and it wouldn't be easy to let any of them go. I'm actually
Hmm.
committed to not letting any of them go. For real, I'm team no divorce. Like if you're in my core group, I don't even want to think about that. We'll figure these problems out, okay?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think for me, there's not a big deal of, oh, you have to meet my family now. And, at some point we're maybe going to talk about joining finances. Like there's not that level of commitment. So I think for me, the vetting is more in romantic relationships, but I do like the idea of you need to keep some of that energy when it comes to your friendships too, just so you don't let everybody or anybody in.
Yeah. I also think too, when things go south in either romantic relationships or platonic friendships,
Hmm.
there is this like accountability and expectation of like, oh, okay, well, like you should be vetting people regardless. So
Hmm.
it's like, okay, on the back end, it's just as important. They're all equal. So
That's true. Okay, vet
yeah.
everybody, Miosha said.
Okay. So I want to get your response to this or just your thoughts on it.
Okay.
It's better and safer for me to just keep to myself, or I'd rather not even have friends like that.
This is very enticing for me. Uh, but I disagree. I think we as human beings need relationships. And I actually preached this message. I was just having a conversation maybe a week or so ago about this, about
Mm,
not being an island and really needing to have good relationships around us and
mhm.
nourishing those relationships. I firmly believe that one of the best investments you can make in life um, is like what people you decide to pour into or enter relationships with. I think that's a huge investment. It can really improve your quality of life or, make your life hell. So I think that's a really huge investment. And so we should have those relationships. We should invest in other people. And honestly, I think if something goes wrong, going to this type of a statement where I'd rather just keep to myself is a little bit hasty, because you will find good people and you will find your people, who understand you or want to understand you, and who you can have reciprocity with. So yeah, those are my thoughts on
Yeah. When I hear this, I think of people who are risk adverse,
that.
in that they're just wanting to shelter themselves from anything bad happening to them, their feelings getting hurt. Um, Things may have happened to them to where they don't want to experience the pain that comes with a friendship breakup, or worse. And so I just see it as a person putting up walls to protect themselves. And the walls are more comforting potentially in if they're in that mindset than them taking the risk or the
Mhm.
upside. So I wouldn't necessarily agree with it.
Yeah.
But I do understand that there could be periods of time where things may have happened where you feel like this is the space I need to be in, but I would just caution against being in that space for forever or for a very long time.
Do you feel like it makes sense for other people to vet your new friend as well? Like, just so you can get an outside perspective, or do you see more danger in that than good?
I think it depends on who you have vetting. You would have to have a very high level of trust,
Mhm.
one, and that person would have to have a deep understanding of you.
Yeah.
I will say for me personally, it definitely feels good if you meet one of my friends and you like them too, or you're like, "Oh, I see why y'all are friends." And I've had other friends be like, "Oh, I see why you and Samaria are best friends."
Mhm.
And so, that feels good, but I also know that people are human,
Mhm.
and um you would just have to trust that their vetting process and how they feel about you is genuine, and that there also wouldn't be any jealousy there of what that new potential friendship could be, because
Yeah.
that's also a thing. Is like, okay, well, you have this new person, now I have to share you. And
Mhm.
so you'd really have to trust that they would, be unbiased and how they vet your new
Yeah.
friend. So
Yeah.
what about you?
I think I agree with everything you said, but I also think on the other side, a danger in having other people vet, especially depending on how in tune with your intuition you are, is that you use other people as a crutch. And so
Mm,
now it's like I can't make a decision without consulting somebody else. And do you think they're a good friend? Do you think so? I do think it could be a crutch, and that's a danger in it. But yeah, other than that, I think it's cool to just have people around who are like, oh, I see this, and if they say I see this, let them say what the specific thing is,
mhm.
because sometimes people will make things up, and it's like that's not even a problem. What? Where did you even get that from? So
Mhm.
yeah, those are my
Yeah.
thoughts on that. But yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of the Girlfriends and Goals podcast. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Girlfriends and Goals Podcast. If you haven't subscribed already, please go ahead and do that now. And don't forget to rate, review, and share. Until next time, bye.
Bye.